All right, do you guys remember the first time you worked out? Think about it for a second. How simple was it? The first time I ever worked out, my dad wrote down on a piece of paper what to do as a program, and then him and I did it together. At that time, it was glorious. I did 100% of what I knew. It was very straightforward. I didn't have any questions because I didn't know there were any questions. I just went straight through the program, thought I knew everything, and that was it. Eventually, in 1993, I bought a Flex magazine, and now I had two options. This cut my implementation from 100% to 50% instantly. Now I had to choose. I had to think. It wasn't clear cut anymore. It wasn't just, this is correct. Now it was, which is better, which is right. This type of learning continues throughout the rest of your time. There's always more information. Even if you're just lifting weights, there are so many options. Which split is best? Total body, upper, lower, or body part split? For what occasion? For what soma type? For what age? For what experience? And that doesn't even count warming up, cooling down, conditioning, or nutrition. Fast forward a decade later, and the amount of information you're going to have to scroll through is ridiculous. Warm-up related, do you static stretch? Should you? If not, why not? If so, for how long? Also, when? Before? After? At night? Should your warm-up be general, or should it be specific? Or should it be geared towards your limitations? And those are just the basics of the basics. Learn a little bit more, become a little bit smarter, and now you have even more questions. Do you use the FMS, SFMA system, or MoveNat? What about original strength, Parisi, Boyle's old warm-up, Boyle's new warm-up, PRI, DNS? It gets so confusing. If you make it to your actual workout portion, do you choose basic progressive resistance, or Wendler's 531, or my modified 863, or West Side, or Joe DeFranco's modified West Side? Do you do a Boyle 4-day split, a starting strength 3-day split, or a super squats 2-day split? Should you do Olympic lifts? How often should you do plyometrics? Should you do bilateral lifts? Are they safe? Should you do single leg work? Is it just a fad? What about tissue work? Should you foam roll before, or should you do it after? Or what about at night? I've read that it will both harm you and help you. I'm not sure. What about band distraction? Kelly Starrett loves it and he's really smart. Mike Boyle hates it and he's really smart. It used to be so simple. Remember when you did 100% of what you knew? Now we do something like 5% of what we know and are only able to implement that. But there's still more options. The purpose of this seminar today is supposed to be hopefully the opposite of that. It's not to add more theoretical fire, but instead to discuss what real people with a decade plus of experience are doing every day. We may discuss some of the best theory that is ideal, but we really want to get back to the heart of it. It's about what's real, because what you see in articles and on Facebook is not real. People only want to it's absolutely not real. People want to sell you something. It's written often by people who spend more time writing than they actually do training. Think about that. The information you're gathering is from people who spend more time writing about it than doing it. They might relay some really good concepts, but they never test it out. They just write it down, sounds good on paper, and they sell it. Then they move on to writing something else that seems interesting. All the while, you're stuck feeling bad about how little you know or how little you're able to implement that. Back when weight training and strength and conditioning first really hit its stride, athletes and coaches learned by doing. They actually did things. They learned, adjusted, failed, and kept learning and trying. You were your own lab. You had to look inside to get better. Now everyone wants to look outside. The ability for coaches to communicate has sped up, and it's fast-forwarded our learning curve. But it's also caused information overload in coaches' and athletes' minds. Yes, it's good to always continue learning. We're all lifelong learners. But it's more important to learn from yourself in what you do every day versus someone else. Only you will know your real situation, and no situation is perfect. I will show you briefly how I come up with the programs I use based off of a process versus methods or lifting styles. Because methods and lifting styles are what people write about, and they will always change, but your process should always be the same. So To filter what to do and what to use, you need to start with a basic philosophy and just a few basic principles. If you have these, everything you look at now has to filter through this. It's a consistent approach versus grabbing at what's new. Because if you do that long enough, you'll end up being lost and forgetting which way is up. What is important to start with, I think, is a general philosophy. Everybody has to have something that's a general philosophy. It has to be simple. Einstein said, make something as simple as possible and no simpler. So my general philosophy is summed down to this. Make someone feel better, not worse. This is why you work out and ultimately why people come to you in the first place. It may be masked in fat loss, better movement, bigger biceps, or a faster 40, but it all distills down to making someone feel better. This means both physically and mentally. Everything you do has to work towards that goal and not work against it. And think about that, physically and mentally. We all start working out to feel better, and all your clients do, but we get too into methods and ideas and our obsession about that because we read new stuff, and then we all of a sudden realize your joints are aching, people are hurting getting out of bed just for small changes in their program. Your goal needs to make them to feel better, both physically and mentally. Now, the basic principles that go underneath that are mostly borrowed from Mike Boyle. Number one is do no harm. In the pursuit of better, we will occasionally go a little bit heavier or do that extra rep that we know we shouldn't. And it doesn't happen right away, but it's a slippery slope. And in the pursuit of better, if you do not follow this principle of do no harm, it can get dicey. By having this be your first principle, however, everything has to filter through it. So only good exercises and good choices can come out on the other side. Number two, reduce the potential for injury. While this is a little bit more athlete-driven, in general, someone should come to you and by the end feel less likely to be injured because they trained with you. Think about that. They should be less likely to be injured because they trained with you. Finally, improve performance. If that's the last thing that they filter out, then we know we're good to go because it's already gone through our general philosophy and basic principles. So I view my general philosophy and basic principles kind of like a Plinko board. That's on The Price is Right if you've seen it. Each of the above shapes the path that you can choose from. And when that chip gets to the bottom, that's your program. And I know that it's gone through the proper screening process to make it acceptable for us. By using these built-in steps, I've taken away a lot of this overload confusion. Everything new has to be proven and its worth in your system by going through this process. And if you have the proper setup, it will force all of your decisions down to that $10,000 mark, and that will be your program. If you don't follow the principles, it can go any direction and get spread awry. So that's kind of how I view it. I strongly recommend you use something similar or just steal exactly what I have. Just give me credit. I will clarify, using this will clarify everything for you in a world that's trying its best to confuse you. Thank you.